I'm Joanne Roberts, and we are going to spend a night at the Manitoba Museum. The Manitoba Museum was opened by Queen Elizabeth II on July 15, 1970. Now, over 50 years later, the museum remains a staple in the province. For this episode of City News Connect, we're going to see some new exhibits, visit some old favorites, and see what history has to say to us. Let's head over to the Nonsuch Gallery. Hi, I'm Joanne.
Hi, Dorota.
Hi, oh my goodness, so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Dorota, level with me. We're in the Nonsuch Gallery. Is this a pirate ship?
It is not a pirate ship,
Okay.
although I know that's a very favorite thing of little visitors to say. It's a fantastic artifact, the largest, in fact, in the museum, and it is an exploratory ship.
That is incredible. And I'm hearing some voices coming. Are those villagers?
They are merchants and peddlers, and they are people kind of working on the banks of England, and they are receiving the cargo that's coming in, and it's entering the British economy.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Dorota, tell me, why is this museum such a staple?
Well, you know, I'm biased, so I'll say that right away. The Manitoba Museum is not just a provincial treasure. This is a Canadian treasure. It's an incredibly immersive space. It's a space that invites you to live into history, to have a conversation in history, with history. It's created in such a way that takes you through biomes, but it integrates both natural elements and animal elements and plant histories together with human stories and the stories of society. It's a space where you are invited to be curious, to perhaps engage with complicated content, but to feel safe in your discovery of questions yet unanswered.
I am so excited to get started. It was so lovely meeting you. Thank you for having us. And we're going to head over, I think, to one of your newest galleries. So I'll see you later.
Thank you.
This cougar was born in the Cypress Hills of Saskatchewan.
Oh, wow.
This is the museum's newest addition, a cougar named SK10. And this is the curator of zoology, Dr. Randall Moy.
So the cougar, shortly after it was born, about a year or so after, it was given this collar. This is a satellite tracking collar, and an ear tag. And so we were able to follow it, or at least the researchers were able to follow it. They were researchers from the University of Alberta, looking at movements of cougars in their natural habitat. Just before it was about 2 years old or so, it left its mother's home range to strike out on its own. And they tracked it, went across the border into Montana, went through Montana for a while, then came back up into Saskatchewan, and stopped at Moose Mountain Provincial Park. And that's when the collar actually stopped working. We thought we had lost it forever, but just a few years later, around 2016 or so, it was picked up on trail cameras in Riding Mountain National Park.
In 2020, researchers discovered SK10 was accidentally caught in a legal coyote snare where it died. With the help of Manitoba Conservation and the Assiniboine Park Zoo, the teams were able to preserve the cougar's body and skeleton for this exhibit. And while it was a long process to create every single thing you see here from scratch, the team still had a lot of fun putting it together.
What is this, and how did you make this?
Well, this is cougar scat, or at least a copy of cougar scat. It's not the actual stuff. So we had a mold made of materials that looks like cougar scat, but it's just a sort of a brown form. So we had a little bit of fun with it, and we had a cougar poop competition among a bunch of us. Some people at the museum decided, they even came up with a little chart and decided which one looked the best.
Oh my gosh.
So this is the one that won. This was actually done by one of our ops fellows, a very talented artist. Yeah, he knows his stuff.
Randy, why was it so important for you and the team here at the Manitoba Museum to be able to showcase a cougar here?
Well, it's an animal that people don't generally associate with Manitoba, but it's probably been here for thousands of years, even though we haven't had any physical evidence of it until the 1970s.
Wow.
They tell a fantastic story. And this one was really special because it had been radio collared. And so we knew a lot more about it. So we wanted to be able to present that to our visitors and let them know that cougars are an important part of the ecology of Manitoba.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Randy. This was great. I loved learning about this cougar, and I can't wait for more people to come see this brand new exhibit.
Well, we can't either. So have everyone come out, and they'll have a great experience.
I'm Joanne Roberts, and we are spending a night at the Manitoba Museum. Visitors come from all over the world to learn about the nature and history of our region. Generations of children, including myself, experienced their first school field trips walking through these halls. Preserving Manitoba's heritage for future generations is part of why the museum does its work. Follow me and let's see some interesting artifacts from when our province was known by many as Rupert's Land. Amelia?
Yeah,
hi. I'm Joanne. Nice to meet you.
Hi, so nice to meet you.
Hi, what do you do here?
I'm the curator of anthropology in the Hudson's Bay Company Museum collection.
Incredible. So that is why we're here. Tell me, what exactly is the collection all about?
So the HBC Museum collection is kind of interesting because it's a little bit about the company's history, but in fact, quite a bit different. It's not a great representation of HBC history or even fur trade history, but very much what a bunch of HBC guys based in England thought would make a cool museum in the 1920s.
Love that. Can you tell me a little bit about the history that we're seeing in this collection?
Yeah, so HBC was established in 1670, but of course we don't have things in the collection from that time period. So in the early period, HBC wasn't so much interested in collecting, but more so making money. So in the 1920s, to celebrate their 250th anniversary, they decided to reach out and put the call out for different artifacts that people had collected and bring them in together as a museum collection. Then it came here to us in the 90s. And so it's just a really neat collection in that it covers coast to coast to coast. And so there's lots of different things. I always say it's the collection for everybody because it's got clothing, it's got tools, it's got a little bit of something that would please anybody.
It's incredible. And we're at an old-timey trading post?
Yeah, kind of a mock trading post here to give visitors an idea of different types of trade goods that would have been available, different types of furs people would be bringing in, and of course touchable for people to touch.
Love that.
And yeah, just kind of a snapshot to give people a glimpse into the past.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that this collection is so important to have here at the Manitoba Museum?
I think having the HBC collection here in Winnipeg is important because HBC's history is so deep here in Winnipeg. So it's just really kind of a hub and a heart of that research, and so it's a great place for it to land here.
What has sort of been the lasting legacy of this collection here over the past 20 years?
Well, I think a lot of visitors would say this gallery's held up pretty well considering it's one of our older ones, and it's because a lot of the belongings here in the collection are just really stunning examples, and they're presented in a really beautiful way that's kind of nice for visitors to walk through as they're experiencing the galleries. And I think having that collection here has allowed us to reinterpret too. So I think thinking about the fur trade and what I knew growing up and how we talked about it was very raw exploration, and it's much more critical now. And I think that's really great that we're engaging with school groups, we're changing our programming, we're changing the way we talk about that history to be more reflective.
Incredible. Well, shall we take a look around?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. What is this room?
So this is a mock-up of the old boardroom in London. So they've kind of recreated, including using actual pieces from that original boardroom. So these wood finishes around the mantle and around the door are actually from the original boardroom that you can see in the photo on the panel.
Oh my gosh. Can I sit in that chair?
No, unfortunately not. So far, the only person to sit in there is the governor of the company, HBC company, Richard Baker.
Okay, that's fair. What is this?
This is maybe one of the cooler objects in the collection. So this is a ram's head snuff mull. So you can see it's the head of a ram.
Okay.
And embedded in his head, they've put all the accoutrement for engaging in snuff, which is what they would do in board meetings at the time. Wow. So you can see all the little tools. There's even a rabbit's foot for dusting off your mustache.
Oh my gosh, that's very well thought of. When do you suppose the last time somebody used it was?
Probably It might have been into the 1920s.
Wow. And you said that this is the original like trimmings from the boardroom?
Yeah, so you can see different iconography. There's a headdress there, there's some sort of tomahawks and firearms. So these are all things that folks in England thought would really epitomize the Hudson's Bay Company over in London. And so when that head office was closing, parts of that came with the collection.
So looking at it now in 2025, what are sort of the changes in tone that we've like sort of accepted and we're looking at?
Yeah, I think that this would be very sort of stereotypical of what a lot of folks over in England would have thought about North America and about First Nations peoples. I don't think that's how they would decorate their boardrooms today if that's what they were going for.
Yeah, that's fair. So it's really hard not to notice this giant boat.
Yeah.
Tell me, why was this so important?
The York boat really revolutionized a little bit the fur trade in that for some of the big lakes, like Lake Winnipeg is massive. Yeah. So if you think about some of these smaller canoes, it's not going to go so well in that big open lake. So having a big York boat was a really great way to transport a lot of goods in one vessel.
What sort of stuff are we seeing inside the boat?
So each little case is kind of its own little story. So the one we're standing in front of right now talks about how they were actually kind of labeling some of the cases and that. This is just a small sample. I think I have a cabinet full of stencils.
Oh, wow.
That they would use to hand paint on top of the bales. So there was different codes for the post and Hudson Bay Company and where it was going. They also had these branding irons that they would use to mark things as well, and bale seals. So they had a really good way of tracking their goods. Even though it predates computers, they were really good between their inventory logs and logbooks and these. They were really great at tracking the movement of goods between.
Thank you so much, Amelia.
Yeah, you're welcome.
One thing before we go, if there is something you would recommend to visitors, what do you think they should do when they're here?
I think there's two things they should do when they come to this gallery, which is look up, because there's some incredible watercraft suspended from the ceiling that people don't always see, and open the drawers. Don't be afraid to open the drawers. If there's a handle, it's meant to be opened.
I'm Joanne Roberts, and as we spend a night at the Manitoba Museum, we have a chance to turn back time to 100 years ago as we explore my favorite exhibit, Winnipeg 1920. When I think about life back then, I immediately think of everything that's different, how we interact with each other, what businesses were booming, and even the technology that's been developed in the last century. But there are still some aspects of life that are the same. Now, I can't go back in time looking like this, so I'm going to go change. You go ahead, or is it technically behind? I'll catch up.
Welcome to Winnipeg, Canada's third largest city in the 1920s. Now, as the museum's curator of history, Dr. Roland Sawatsky, and I take a stroll down memory lane, I really tried to put myself in the era, grabbing a malt at the Strathcona restaurant, heading to work at the Tribune, and of course, going to the movies. I mean the pictures.
Roland, can you tell me where we're sitting right now?
We're sitting in the Allen Theatre, which was built in 1920, downtown Winnipeg. And now the original Allen Theatre is the Met, which you know, right across from the hockey stadium. It's been reconstructed here. This was done in 1974, and it's been showing classics ever since, to the great delight of our visitors. But now we have a new film in here as well, called The Romance of the Far Fur Country. We're really happy to have that here, and that was done by the HBC in 1920. It was premiered in the Allen Theatre, so we thought it was a good fit.
So in 1920s Winnipeg, I can't help but notice that we are literally 100 years out. Are there still some aspects of daily life in the 1920s that you feel still resonates with people living today?
Oh yeah, I mean, there are ancestors in some cases. They are human beings who had to go to work, and they had families, and so a lot of the same issues that we have now. And you know, when I was doing research to do some of the renovations of this space, I was looking at news items and headlines from 1920s newspapers, and I saw a lot of the same issues, concerns about what was happening overseas, concerns about vaccinations after the 1918 pandemic, robbery, theft, the usual suspects, the things you hear about all the time. So there's a lot in common. Now, of course, a lot has changed too. Then we got our news exclusively from newspapers, and now it's from many, many different sources. But a lot of the titles and the headlines are very, very similar.
Wow. And obviously this is a hit with many people that come here, not just Winnipeggers or Manitobans, people that come from all over the world to this museum. What is it about the 1920s exhibit that you think really speaks to people and keeps them coming back?
It's immersive. So you walk in and everything is open to you to explore. It's exploratory. Every time you turn a corner, you see something. And then it's multiple visits too. So people keep coming back and they keep finding new things because there's thousands of artifacts and stories in here. And I think it's multi-generational as well. So now grandparents are taking their grandkids here and they can talk about the same experience. And that's a lot of fun too. So we hear a lot of families talking and laughing in here.
So as much as I want to stay in here, I could literally stay in this theater all day, but let's take a look around.
Sure.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, so you can see Portage Avenue there.
Oh my goodness,
But
you
it has horses and it has no traffic signals at all.
Yeah.
It's totally dangerous.
Okay,
And people
that was
are
my next
running in all
question.
directions.
Ooh, this looks like a very important place.
Yeah, it's again one of the favorites.
Wow. What are we seeing in here?
This is the Colclough Pharmacy, a drugstore. And this was on Notre Dame Avenue, and we have a mannequin here, and she's Hattie Colclough, who was one of the first female graduates of the Manitoba College of Pharmacy. And she managed this drugstore with her husband for over 30 years.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible. So if we take a look at what's in this cabinet here.
Yeah, these days it would be nothing good. You've got syrup of figs, laxative. Anyone?
I'm good.
Usually you eat Raisin Bran now, so.
We've got something called Dr. Shoot, Scrofulasyphilis, remedy, Fellows syrup for everything that ails you, and so on and so forth. Extract of malt.
Yeah, not a lot of things that I recognize here.
No. And there weren't a lot of regulations around medication at the time, so people just did whatever they want and tried to sell what they could. And then finally the regulations came in and said, look, a lot of this is not good for you, especially the stuff with opiates or cocaine.
That was my next question.
Yeah. We don't have any of that in here, just so you know.
Darn. And I couldn't help but notice, and maybe it's my own bias, that there's a photo lab right here with really cool things.
Yes, these are the cameras of 1920 and earlier, and it was after about 1890 that photography became something that regular people could enjoy and do themselves. And by the 1920s, it was a real important hobby for a lot of people and a business for some people as well.
Definitely a little different than the iPhone we're shooting on right now. I also hear that there is a new exhibit upstairs. Is that right?
Yeah.
Shall we go take a look?
Yeah, let's go see.
Yeah.
So this is the A&M Hertig Furrier Shop. And they had a furrier shop on Portage Avenue where they would both make the furs, so we have this sort of invisible wall so you can see the back room where they're making fur coats and such. And then you had a front room where you would, of course, display and sell. And the Hertigs were Adolf and Max Hertig. They were Jewish immigrants from Romania, and they started their business in 1908, and then by 1920 it was doing very well. And then by the 1930s, it was actually the center of a labor dispute between a furriers union and the owners.
Oh, wow.
And so there was all this press about this labor dispute, not just here, but throughout Winnipeg. It was eventually resolved when World War II started, and there was a huge demand for their products, and so everybody was getting paid. Wow. So we have hand muff, and then you have various mantles that you put on, like this one here. And here are some beaver hats for men, and a stole. The stole is something that goes around your neck, often made with full animals.
That's a face. Okay.
Yeah. And then this one as well is a full cape.
Yeah. Thank you so much for showing me around 1920s Winnipeg. I've been here so many times, but it's always nice to, have somebody around that knows what they're talking about, that can explain all the little things that I'm curious about. Do you have a particular favorite part of this exhibit?
Oh gosh, I have a lot of favorites. And there's all these little things that we put in there as well for people to discover. For instance, in Madame Tarot's room, we have new music that's being played in there, and it's all the hits from 1919 and 1920, but not just from North America, but from other countries as well. Things that people would have been listening to here.
What you've seen with us tonight is just a small fraction of the incredible discoveries you can make here at the Manitoba Museum. And you know what? There's always something new to find and learn about.